All right, we've got our second segment. So let's get into 3 keys for Oregon to win big. They could go 0 for 3 on these keys and still find a way to win the game because they're just a more talented team than the Golden Gophers, and they're at home where the only teams to beat Dan Lanning have NFL quarterbacks and NFL receivers. That's it. That's the formula so far for the 2 losses he's got at Autzen Stadium. And sometimes even NFL receivers and a really good college quarterback, Ohio State last year, isn't enough. Minnesota has none of that. So I think this is going to be tough for the Golden Gophers. But for Oregon, I think key number 1, above all else, sometimes these are ranked, sometimes they are not. But key number 1 for Oregon is getting off to a strong start. Because while the Ducks are at home and you've got Autzen Stadium behind you, which is probably how it would be rationalized from a scheduling standpoint, and everybody has these sorts of breaks. And I know that Oregon has played a lot of opponents with a rest advantage this year, and the other team has a rest advantage. Minnesota is off a bye, and Oregon just went into the rain on the road at Iowa, a very physical, hard-fought, emotionally draining football game. And no matter what kind of team you are, you can certainly get into a place mentally where you're just like, man, would have loved that extra day of rest. Man, how are we got to get back into the rhythm, get back into the flow? The last time Oregon had a Friday night game like this was Purdue, which I believe was post-Ohio State, if I remember correctly. So now I got to double check that sort of thing. That's one of those things that I say during the show, and I didn't necessarily plan to, but then it pops in my head, and I realize, I gotta double check that, of course. So Purdue was the game following Ohio State last year. That game was on a Friday on the road after a very physical, hard-fought, emotional win. Oregon went on the road and won that game 35-0. That would be cool. 35-0 would have me in a good mood for the reaction show on Friday night. That'd be excellent. Superb. 10 out of 10. 5 stars. No notes. I'm kidding. I'd always find notes. But this is not a Minnesota team that's 1-11. But Oregon's at home. Still, that Purdue game was significantly easier. Great environment at Purdue in that game, but Oregon just came out. The defense was stifling, and I think they could be again in this game. So if Oregon gets off to a strong start, if they're able to play with, I won't be surprised at all if this game is not as big of a margin as fans would like. Like, I could see 10-3 after the first quarter. And fans are kind of looking around going, well, okay. Or 7-3. Just something like that where it looks like Oregon is kind of shaking off the Iowa game and getting redialed into this spot. Minnesota's just a little bit fresher. If Oregon starts strong in this one, if the first quarter is Minnesota's best shot, Minnesota is not built to come back. Generally speaking, that's the case, but especially against Oregon, they are not built to be able to come back from a deficit. So if Oregon gets a 2-3 possession lead early on, you will not see a miraculous comeback. They can't throw the football like that, especially against this Ducks defense. So starting strong is key number 1. I am fully prepared in my head for a less than ideal start, but if Oregon comes out and scores on the first 2 drives and is up 14-0, then I might go live at halftime and say, yeah, the Ducks have got this one. So starting strong is key number 1. Key number 2, containing the ground game. Just like the Iowa matchup last week, stylistically and their game plans every week, a lot of Minnesota resembles Iowa. There are a lot of similarities between those two. I actually think Drake Lindsey is a better overall passer than Mark Gronowski, and he's going to be throwing the ball, it appears, in better conditions than Gronowski was last week. Still, Oregon at home is not easy to throw the ball on. Even in that Indiana game, Mendoza only went for 215 and he threw a pick 6. That guy is the betting favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. Pretty sure he still is as I record the show. See, there's another. Yeah, he is. He's at plus 130. That's crazy. I would pick Julian Saint at Ohio State personally because of the numbers, but Mendoza's clutch factor certainly can't be overlooked there. But anyway, if you contain Minnesota's ground game and they have good backs, They brought in a transfer in the offseason that hasn't been able to get going. I think he's battled an injury. Darius Taylor may or may not play. Darius Taylor's a good running back. Good running back. I was bullish on him coming into the year because I watched him play football before. He is, I think, frankly, kind of like what Jordan Davison, should I say, is becoming or has already become. I don't know. But if you go watch those two guys run, the physicality while also having breakaway speed is an awesome combination. If Darius Taylor plays, that makes Minnesota more dangerous because they can keep their guys fresh, not have to rely completely on Femi Ejeboy. But Ejeboy is a guy that can also get himself going on the ground and can be the driving force for the offense. And if Freudian slip. If Minnesota is able to just run the ball and get up and down the field, they will do just that. But I want Lindsey to have to throw the ball consistently, and I trust this Oregon secondary implicitly at this point, especially in a matchup like this. So that's number 2. Number 3 is protecting Dante Moore. We've seen over the years, I mean, it's really, part of the 23 season, but this entire year, when Dante Moore has been under pressure, he doesn't do as well. Newsflash, neither do most quarterbacks. Now, some are better at it than others. I think it's an area where Dante Moore can improve. But one thing that he's done a good job of this year and deserves a lot of credit for is his ability to not run himself into sacks like Caleb Williams had a tendency to do at USC and with the Bears as well. And they've had to coach that out of him. Dante Moore doesn't have that problem. He also gets the ball out on time so that the pass rush doesn't always have an opportunity to get home. And so that's one of the reasons that Oregon's sack numbers are low. Like last year, after the Boise State-Indiana game, or Boise State and Idaho games, rather, when Dylan Gabriel got everything settled down and Oregon didn't allow a bunch of sacks, one of the reasons is Gabriel's mobile, but also Gabriel knows how to get the offensive line in the right protections, make the right reads, and get the ball out before defensive linemen have time to get after the quarterback. Because one other thing with Mateo Uyunglele this year is that a lot of other teams, I think, everybody, of course, watch this film, they know how good Oregon's defensive front is. And their game plan generally is going to be, let's get the ball out of our hands quickly because I don't want Mateo or Amari Washington or Bear Alexander or Tatum Tui. I don't want to go back in the pocket and give those guys time to get home and see how our O-line holds up. So I think that's been a game plan for teams. I expect it to be again because I don't think Minnesota has any delusion about, hey, we think our offensive line can hold it for 3 to 4 seconds consistently. Like, nope, I don't think they're going to be able to. But bringing this back to Dante Moore, when he's had time this year, he's just been awesome. No sacks against Iowa last week. This Minnesota pass rush has some disruptive players, without question. I think that if they're able to keep Dante Moore clean, whether the weapons we'll talk about in the third segment are fully healthy and available or not, I think Dante Moore is just able to play at a level that helps him elevate them, like you saw on that last drive against Iowa. Who made plays on that drive? McClellan, who had a drop earlier, Cooper Perry, Malik Benson. Turns out when you have a really good quarterback, suddenly your weapons can look a lot better. They can help him out, to be sure, but I think that if you protect Dante Moore in this game, the likelihood, as I was talking about the turnovers earlier, if you protect Dante Moore, the likelihood that turnovers are going to show up goes down pretty dramatically. So if you start strong, contain the ground game, protect Dante Moore, if Oregon does 3 of those things, all 3 of those things, I should say, they're probably covering the 25.5 point spread, according to our friends at FanDuel. If they do 2, they're also probably winning by over 20 points. If they do 1 or 0, well, maybe it'll be a thriller at Autzen on Friday night. But those are the 3 keys that I've got for Oregon to win this game big.